I was hospitalized for septic meningitis. Also, I was on oxygen, lots of testing, a lot of doctor's appointments, a lot of trying to find the right doctors, kind of knew what was going on. Subsequently, I was diagnosed with long COVID. It turned into extreme fear. There was a point where I didn't feel like I possibly could make it. There was a lot of fluctuations in my blood pressure. There was a lot of fluctuation in my heart rate. I have worked a lot with my husband on our house, countless hours, being able to lift bags, much more than what I used to be able to when I first got sick. I definitely have gone from walking 500 steps to walking 7 to 10,000. The other day, I did 16, no AP. It was awesome. And it's something you don't even think about anymore. Like, oh gosh, is this a trip planned coming up this spring? I feel very confident about it. I'm not worried about it whatsoever. I've also been helping my friend out at her store on occasion.
How's it going, Thrivers? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Stephanie, who has an amazing story. She's come such a long way in the last couple years here. She was dealing with a vaccine injury plus getting COVID, which was one of the final triggers that caused her health quality to really drop to the point where she was hospitalized, couch-bound, was had assisted living. She had to learn how to walk and talk again and eat again. So very, very severe case here, but now she's able to go out and live much of her life and do 7 to 10,000 steps a day, and really just increase that quality of life to the same level, if not more, and if not a higher level of quality than it was before. But it's an amazing story. But Stephanie, you want to quickly introduce yourself to everybody here?
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I have been in the program for a little over a year now, and I wanted to come on here and kind of share my story with everybody, just to give some hope, because I remember a time where I didn't have any, and there is definitely hope out there.
Absolutely. There's a lot of hope, especially with, all this content online now. You see all these people getting better, and it's cool to see, or cool to be
Yes,
one of those people who's now passing on the torch and inspiring other people.
it is.
So going back, right? And you had this for roughly 3 years, right? It's about 3 years
Yes.
ago when this hit you really hard.
Yeah, about 3 years ago, like you said, it kind of started with vaccine injury and then subsequently COVID infection, which the COVID infection, it wasn't severe when I had it. It's more the after effects. About 2, 3 weeks after the infection is when a lot of the symptoms, the uncomfortable, severe symptoms started. Um, and that was kind of the beginning of my story. I spent about 7 months in and out of hospitals. I was hospitalized for septic meningitis. Also, I was on oxygen. Lots of testing, a lot of doctor's appointments, and a lot of trying to find the right doctors who kind of knew what was going on. Subsequently, I was diagnosed with long COVID, um, POTS, dysautonomia, and ME/CSF, as well as quite a few other medical conditions, due to everything. So it was a place that was very difficult that I never thought I'd find myself in. And at the time that I got sick, I was also dealing with other stressors in my life that I probably wasn't um, properly coping with, that I know now. And yeah, when I got sick, I was bedridden. Like you said, I had to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. I was basically living every day just to survive, for my children. So, um, yeah, there was times where I remember, you know, back when I was in a lot of the different Facebook groups for long COVID or POTS that I found to be eventually very negative and not very helpful to me. There was a time and a place, but I am no longer in those. I definitely am still in the CFS Recovery Facebook page. but I have kept in touch with a few people that I met in there, and I remember just even a year and a half ago talking to her, and we were both just saying what we would do to be able to feel comfortable in our own home and be able to even watch a movie, or do simple things, to cook again, to clean again, to do basic things, to drive again, that kind of stuff, and do it, somewhat comfortably. And I definitely feel that I have surpassed, beyond my wildest dreams, those goals that I originally had from this illness.
That's amazing. That is amazing, and I know there's so much more in everything you just said there, but to
Yeah.
be able to I mean, to have to learn to walk and talk and eat again, and I've been there. I've definitely been there myself. I was also hospitalized just like you, but, going back in time here, you had the vaccine hit you, and then you had the COVID infection. And then usually,
Right.
just like everybody else we see, they're usually okay for about 2 to 3 weeks. They kind of resume life. They go back to trying to just pick up where things left off, but then they get hit with a second wave of symptoms, essentially. So what were
Right.
those symptoms that you got hit with 2 to 3 weeks after that COVID infection?
Oh, I had many. The first that I noticed was very, very heavy legs. My body was lethargic. I was having trouble walking. Um, I had a lot of dizziness, almost, you know, a sense of syncope, or pre-syncope, and I did have a couple syncope episodes actually. um, there was a lot of fluctuations in my blood pressure. There was a lot of fluctuations in my heart rate. That at the time I had never known what POTS was, or what any, this whole nervous system deregulation. And I never knew how complex the nervous system was and how it regulates so much in your body. I had sensitivity to light, sound, even touch. I had, ringing in my ears. I had tremors. My body was so tired, but I had insomnia. It was very hard for me to sleep. Um,
It's a lot of stuff,
it's
and
a
there's
lot. Yeah. And I'm
probably
sure that
dozens
there's
more.
there's more. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's more that I'm maybe forgetting, but yeah, a lot of very intense symptoms at the time.
Mhm. And when they hit, 2 to 3 weeks after that COVID infection, did you go from, walking around, driving to having to stay in bed all day, or were you still a little bit more functional for the next little bit, and then little by little you lost capacity?
Um, I would say so. When I had the my personal vaccine injury, it was more like little by little. But then when I had the subsequent COVID infection, about a month and a half after that, I had my infection. 2 weeks went by, and then it hit me like that. It was very quick. It was very intense, and things changed very drastically for me.
Wow, okay. And what was going through your mind when you're feeling all these mysterious symptoms? I mean, what was your initial reaction? Because for me, I had a bunch of symptoms and I thought they were just gonna go away or I could sleep it off and that, next week I'll be okay." Like,
Yeah.
that's usually what people think, and then it just drags
Right.
on and it compounds. What was going through your mind at that time?
Um, At that time, I mean, yeah, I did think that they were going to go away because I had some, previous couple months, some back and forth residual symptoms. So, I wasn't sure what was going on, but um for a little while there, I did think it was going to go away, and then it turned into extreme fear. And you know, there was a point where I didn't know, and didn't feel like I possibly could make it. And I do remember making videos for my loved ones, just in case. So it was definitely a very dark place, that I'm able to talk about now. It was hard for me for a while, even as I was going through the program to talk about it. But I'm in such a different and healed place that I never thought I would be at. That it's just, yeah. So, and then when you're going through the doctors and the testing and all of that, it takes a while, and there's so much testing, and it's very grueling, and I don't regret doing it. Me personally, I was able to, and I think there's a time and a place for medicine and supportive care. Um, but I'm so grateful that, there were certain doctors that I did find that were able to help me, um, more, and kind of introduce me to what was going on with my nervous system that led me to find this program.
Yeah. And with all of these new symptoms coming up, obviously it all hit you at once and then it got worse and worse and worse over time. When did you reach that point of being hospitalized? Like how long did it take to get to that point after you got COVID?
Um, After the COVID infection, so it was about 2 weeks in between where I still had some, like, COVID residual symptoms, but I was never hospitalized during COVID. It was just, like the being lethargic, and, having like
It's like a
a
bad
lingering
flu.
cough. Yeah. So when the symptoms, when it got to be to where I started, having to be hospitalized, was about 3 weeks after that.
Okay, so it actually wasn't too long after that.
No.
And uh, what made you go to the hospital initially? Just really not being able to function and tons of symptoms?
Yeah, the functioning and tons of symptoms, as well as, uh, we barely ever used it, but I had a blood pressure machine in my house, and I checked that, and I never had any issues with that. And that and my heart rate were kind of going all over the place. I didn't know what was going on. And just, yeah, the symptoms, I didn't feel like myself. It was I was also very overstimulated, which I had never felt before. Just, I was very sensitive to any kind of stimulation going around, like the neurological symptoms that I was having. It was, just very intense for me, and it was, scary at the time. And now looking back, it's not, because I know what was going on. And but yeah, that's what led me to go to the hospital.
And how long were you in there for?
The first hospitalization, I was there for 7 days.
Mm,
That is when I was diagnosed with they did a spinal tap test, but that was when I was diagnosed with the septic meningitis and syphilitis. It was very low as far as, diagnostic wise, but I was still diagnosed with it and treated, and the treatment didn't work. Um,
mm,
my symptoms continued, and I felt like I was a little bit deteriorating more and more. And that's when the I had a lot of, like, chest pressure, breathlessness that started after that. I ended up going to a pulmonologist the first time, and I ended up on oxygen. It's something that I never expected, and my prognosis and outlook wasn't very good according to the doctors. You know,
mm,
there wasn't anything that was, set in stone, but yeah, it took a while to get to the doctors, that I needed to get to. We have a really good hospital system about an hour away, up in Cleveland, and we have a dysautonomic neurology department, as well as a really good infectious disease, immunology, and rheumatology department. And, after going through all those testing and finding out that I had POTS, dysautonomia, as well as a few other, autoimmune, disorders, which are getting better. And it's been proven in the blood work. And I mean, I've even done tests like tubes down my throat to be diagnosed with esophageal dysmotility, which they said was, lifetime. I no longer have that either.
Wow.
um you know it's just it's remarkable. It's so remarkable. And yeah, I found an he's the head of infectious disease, immunology and rheumatology. um Obviously all the much many tests and blood work was done. By that point he ran a few more, and he started talking to me about his experience with long covid, and also things like fibromyalgia, MECSF. He's very familiar with those, and he explained how it is a nervous system disorder, a physiological nervous system disorder, where he explained it as um it's almost like a misfiring of the nervous system or a deregulation of the nervous system and the neurons that create these symptoms, and sometimes real diagnoses. But the good thing is he told me they can be helped, and he explained a program that he did that helped him. I kind of looked into it and I found your program, and I thought it was a really good fit for me. And just hearing it from a doctor who is so well known and well versed too, not everybody gets that opportunity. And, that gave me a lot of confidence in going into this program. So,
Hmm. Yeah. And you plugged in right away and started putting in the work, working closely with the coaches and everything. So you found us about a year ago, right? So that would be, what is that? 2 years, two and a half
it was,
years, or a year and a half into your illness,
yeah, a year
right?
and a half into my illness. Yeah, and I started the program in August of 2023. Um, And, of course, I was still so deregulated and going through so much at the time. And you learn so much through the program, and it's very in depth, in detail, even scientific stuff that you guys share. And of course, you know you can't give medical advice, which is why you always tell people to go and make sure that everything's okay first. And but even people with medical diagnoses like myself, I mean, it helps so much more than I could um ever say. So if there is anybody out there that's saying, or wondering if this will help them, if they have been diagnosed with something, it absolutely can,
Mm.
um, with a multitude of different things.
Yeah, we've seen some pretty remarkable stories, and you've seen it inside the community. Almost every week there's some crazy wind coming out of somebody who was bedridden, and now they're doing
Yeah.
some wild stuff like traveling, or like even
Yes.
like working, hanging out with friends, working out, things like that. There's just one the
Right.
other, I think yesterday morning. But when you first came on board, what were s- what was that first big mind shift you had, or like the first big win where you felt things starting to turn around, or that seed was planted where like you said this could work. Okay, I actually feel a difference. When was that for you?
I would say, so symptomatic wise, it took me quite a while, which is okay. Everybody is at their own pace, and it's just really important not to compare yourself to others. But symptomatic wise, I still had the pretty uncomfortable, colorful symptoms for quite some time, for months actually, in the intensity that I was having them. However, going through the first 6 weeks of the program and learning the detail that you guys go into, and you guys sharing your own personal stories, I mean, that meant so much to me and was so helpful, just knowing that it's not coming from necessarily a doctor who's seen it with other people or who has read about it, but people and coaches who have actually experienced it themselves. And you guys, like I said, you've shared a lot of your story and different pictures and things like that. And that was a huge support system, as well as being able to talk with the coaches and get, that support that I really felt like I needed in this time in my recovery that I was missing. I will say, it did take a while for me to notice a symptom change, and my advice for anybody with that, because that can happen, it's just everybody's different, is to stick with it, and it does happen. And like, I mean, I'm telling you everything because I had Junior as my main coach. Of course, I got to know all the coaches, but everything he told me that was going to happen, it did. And it just, you know, it can be a long process, but it's not as long as you think. And it just, once it clicks, it starts to click and it just keeps rolling and getting better and better. So,
It's very difficult at the beginning to build that momentum, right? Because a lot of it, you're going off just blind faith that, okay, this stuff, it should work in theory. I don't feel any
right.
major changes yet. But it's like that rock splitting analogy video in week 2. Remember that one?
Which
It's
that was, yeah, that was another golden nugget, as we say, that was very helpful for me, in understanding. There's a lot of those, and even the community in general. It's a positive community. It's not something that's toxic positive, as I call it, but meaning like, we don't dwell and ruminate. It's more about finding solution. We're able to share experiences, but it's in a forum that is supervised and that is helpful. And being able, like you said, to see as I grow through the program, people that I started with, or even people that were a little bit ahead of me, but were still, having those symptoms, and here they are all of a sudden doing recovery and reviews and telling us even stories, go even before that, telling us stories of, all of their wins. And it's something that is undeniable. And I mean, there's so much evidence and proof to it. It's just irrefutable.
Mhm. What were some of the golden nugget principles or frameworks that really, made it click for you? And I know there's so many to choose from, but, like, for example, me understanding the nervous system stress threshold and then understanding the difference between adjustment periods and crashes, that was one of the big game changers for me that my doctor taught me, but also responding well to symptoms, like really keeping it simple. What were some of those big ones for you that became
Right.
ingrained into your brain? And when you're in an AP or flare up, you always reminded yourself of these things.
Yeah, definitely the nervous system triangle that is shared in the program and elsewhere, I'm assuming, and other avenues that you guys do. And being able to see that tangibly, and understanding where I was in the triangle, and how, you guys explained how the amygdala works, and just um, different ways in explaining that, and kind of saying, okay, well, in the nervous system triangle, this is where what you're experiencing, this is where you're at, and kind of just building on that, as well as learning that healing isn't linear, and that's okay. And yeah, just the fact of, like you mentioned, responding well to symptoms. It was difficult for me for a while, but I do remember, and this was so important to me, Junior saying, in one of the group calls, starting out, even if you respond 10% of the times to the symptoms, that makes all the difference. And it will grow and grow and grow. And I found that to be super helpful as well. Um, and now, I mean, I'm responding well 100% of the time to the symptoms. So you definitely get there, even if you think when you first start that you can't. Um, it's just every little bit helps. And I did find that it was interesting how simple this can actually be. And at the same time, you guys explain why. And that for me was helpful. I'm a person that does like to kind of, I do like to keep it simple, but I do like to also understand the whys. So it was a good mix of everything, and the program for all the types of people that come for help.
Yeah, we try to build in as much logic as possible so it makes sense for people, but
Right,
also it can be a complex topic. Like how do you break down all this science of the nervous system and brain into like a 3 or 4-minute video that someone with brain fog and 20 different symptoms
right,
can understand and
right.
retain. So that's the big challenge in the space, but I think we figured out a way to do it with analogies and even giving you guys like homework to unlock certain things, like
Which was
assignments in the first 6
also
weeks.
very helpful. I remember in the first 6 weeks, I forget what the homework was called, but it was where, we reframed, what is like what we're thinking, and there was certain criteria to it, but what we were thinking, and then reframed it in a different way. And that also clicked for me, like, okay, wait a second, like I can see how this works. And you know how the brain and feeding it, constant negativity, it's almost like what you say and what you feed it, you become. Of course, you're allowed to have your moments and things like that, which is okay. And you guys definitely tell us that. But then set aside some time for that. And then let's move forward, and let's, you know, swat those negative thoughts, and, respond the best we can to symptoms. And that could mean anything for me and what you guys have taught. It could mean anything from distraction at times, whether it was a time where I was laying in bed and I could draw a little bit, or try to watch a little bit of a happy movie, or you know as my capacity increased, I could do other things, or just also sitting with the symptoms and realizing, this is okay. And this is going to, if you respond well, this is going to catapult you, if you will, to the next level. And I didn't see that for the first few months, maybe 5 to 6 months. So that can be normal for anybody that's listening to this, but it really started to make a difference, in those other months for me, and especially now. And another thing I did that I had talked about, it's kind of nice because the coaches personalize things for people. Um, for a year, I wrote in a wins journal. It's just a regular notebook, and I wrote no matter how small or how big, wins every day, and that's what I focused on. It was nothing negative; it was my wins, and it's incredible looking. I still have it. It's incredible looking back at the progression of everything. And there's of course gratitude journals, and there's different tips and tricks that they have of, getting a little bit of sunlight if you can. If you can't go outside, open the windows. Or there's so many different things that they really, really invest in you and help you with.
Mhm. Yeah, so your first 5 to 6 months, because a lot of people as well, they'll feel like they're at some sticking point as
Right.
well before the progress kinda takes off. We call it like a hockey stick moment of
Right.
progress. And a lot of people, it's because their symptoms remain very high, but little by little, their capacity is creeping up, but the symptoms are still high. Was that how
Yes.
it was for you? Or
Yes. Yeah.
okay.
That was very much how it was for me. Um, and even like the first couple months, my capacity didn't increase, but I started to notice like the cognitive capacity getting better, and the physical symptoms weren't, which they're just as important. It's all of it together. It's not just the physical stuff that we work on; it's the cognitive symptoms too, as well. And for me personally, fear. I went through a lot of what I consider medical trauma. Um, you know, there was a lot of fear. Everybody has their, I think,
Kryptonite?
yeah, and fear was definitely mine. And you know, Junior really helped me personalize that, in order to to overcome that fear. And, even now, if I
What was the
have,
what was
oh,
the
go ahead.
fear of? Was it like, crashing or doing the wrong thing or not trusting the body? Because that's kinda what it was for me. I didn't
Yes.
trust my body at all, but was that what it was
Yes.
for you too?
It was huge. And unless somebody has been in it themselves, it's just so hard to understand when you don't trust your own body and you can't rely on your own body, as at least that's how I felt at the time. It's definitely it's that fear. And when I did start the program, I still had the fear of this illness was going to kill me. And we worked through that, and then I got through. I mean, it was a legitimate progression, and it was a point of, okay, now will I ever actually get over this? Will I ever be able to? I'm not. I don't have a fear of dying anymore, but now, and I know I'm not going to, and I know what this is, but will I ever? What if I'm the exception? I see all these other people, getting better, but I haven't yet, and I've definitely learned that again, you have to go by your own pace and not compare. Then the fear was, well, what if I don't get any better than where I'm at? And then when we worked on that, it dissipated, and I don't have it at all anymore. The fear. So
Yeah,
it was a work in progress for me, but and there were so many things too that you really can just surprise yourself with. And a couple, my husband, he had a medical emergency this summer. And I that was one thing that also catapulted me. um Not saying I recommend this obviously to anybody, but there's different things that people go through, that can catapult them. And I knew that that was fear based. So I always had the fear of, oh my goodness, can I do this on my own? Can I be the parent while he is going through this, and was in the hospital? He's doing much better now, by the way. But it it almost forced me to do it, and it really was a turning point for me, and it gave me so much more confidence in myself, as a wife, as a mother, as a person. And that's when I really started to, I mean, I took all the tools and I was already, going on the right path. But when I really started to trust my body, like, wait a second here, I've got this. So
mhm,
yeah, I mean, I handle stress now totally different. And, I look at the silver lining and everything. And I've accomplished a lot of things. I still have obviously a lot more that I want to accomplish, and I take it day by day. And that's what how you always say your 3 foot world. That's so important to do. And you know, the overthinkers in us, we just we learn not to do that anymore and take it day by day. So
absolutely, and I love what you said about, uh, you know, these flare-ups or these curveballs in life, they can be the catalysts that catapult you forward in recovery. I like to call them like springboards to get to the next
yeah,
level,
right,
and it could go one of 2 ways, before I learned any of this stuff about the nervous system, anytime I would have any symptom, it was like an immediate downward spiral because there wasn't that other door that I knew existed where you could actually make improvements after
right,
going through a flare because I
right,
didn't have the tools, right? And so it's great to see you implement the things we taught you and also use the tools because at the end of the day, we can only show you the tools and give you them, but ultimately you have to put them to use, and that's exactly what you did.
right.
You
And it
you use
just it comes together. It just, you go through the program for a little bit, and you know, a lot of people can catch on quicker maybe than I did, but that's okay. Everybody is at their own pace, and like it just, yeah, you continuously use these tools and you don't give up, and then it just clicks. And you guys do give us those. It's a lifetime worth of tools to not go backwards. And I
them.
don't think that there's anything that could make me go backwards, and go back to the place that I was in. And, to be able to have that confidence is really just just everything.
hmm I like to compare it to it's almost like playing a game of chess, right? It can be a very complex game, especially when you don't understand the rules or know what's going on. Like it's kind of like in recovery when we don't know what's going on. We have no idea what to do. Should I do more? Should I do less? Am
Yeah,
I crashing? Is this normal? It's almost like playing chess, but just randomly putting pieces on the board with no strategy. But once you understand the rules of the game and you get
right.
more practice and you get more reps and you start to see patterns and you start to get better and better at navigating the journey of recovery because there are a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs and curveballs. There's so many things that happen that you know you you can't predict, or just life curveballs in general. But overall, you can start to recognize these patterns. You can't quite predict them, but you can recognize these things,
We
especially
can.
the more progress cycles you go through. I always say your first 5 flare-ups, those are the scariest ones. Your first 5
Mhm.
conscious adjustment periods, because you're having to trust that, okay, this is not a crash. This is not a crash. This is okay. I'm not going
Yeah,
backwards. But after those first 5, and especially when you start to level up through them, then those next ones are easier, and it just gets easier and easier because it's familiar, and
it
you know how the
does.
story goes.
Yeah, it does. And, I definitely remember there was a point in time where I didn't think I would be able to, fully feel in tune with myself again and recognize those things. And now, I mean, it just comes so easy. You don't even really have to think about it. And it's another thing I like about the program is at the beginning of the program, there's obviously a first part, which is the basics. You always say go back to basics, and that's definitely, again, the bread and butter and everything that, um, everybody should always go back to. But then there's a second part because there's different, almost like different things that you should be doing when you're in the beginning stages versus, you're able to kind of do a little bit more in the a little bit more recovery phase, the integration phase, I should say.
Mhm.
And there's a little bit more different rules for that. And you guys line that up very easily. There's really not any margin for error with that because it's very or not self explanatory, but you guys make it very self explanatory for us. And yeah, it really is simple and makes sense and helpful not only to get us out of the initial phase but to continue growing and growing through this and to become a better version of yourself, which in certain ways, you know I definitely didn't have a goal of wanting to be who I was. Obviously in the trenches of it all, I wanted those certain things back, even being able to drive and doing things. But through this, I have learned that, I want to be a better version of what I was before I got sick. So, um,
Absolutely. It's
yeah,
the whole goal we have with people is not just to cope with symptoms and not to manage it for the rest of your life and, feel like you're
right.
walking on eggshells, hoping that a crash doesn't come out of nowhere and hit you 8 years down the road. It's really to help you understand exactly what's going on and also exactly why, you ended up in this situation, but also
Yeah,
exactly how to get out. And when you understand all of those things, it's very difficult to relapse and go backwards. And I've tested this. In fact, last week I was in Hawaii and I ran this 10-kilometer mini marathon. I just signed up on 7 hours
fun.
notice. Yeah, because I said, you know what? I've always wanted to do this. I haven't trained at all for this. I don't run at all, but I'm curious. If I say this stuff really works and my nervous system is recovered, would I be able to do this? It's gonna suck, but I shouldn't crash. So I did it,
Right.
and it was brutal. No symptoms, 0
Yeah,
symptoms. I even went on a hike after that. Um, I was wrecked the next day, but no symptoms. It was just sore. So,
right. Which is
the
good. It's like yeah, that's, I mean, to be expected. So
yeah,
and
and the tools you learn through recovery, that you could definitely carry them on with you in the rest of your life in different areas as well. Because ultimately, it's learning to respond well to not just symptoms, but just stressors, and learning to focus on what you can control. And I think that gives you lots of peace of mind. At least it gave it to me, because I was an extreme overthinker, overanalyzer, and over worrier, thinking of worst case scenarios before. So I was
Yes.
too proactive about things, right? But now I live a lot more calm life than before, even though I still do a lot of stuff. It's way more sustainable, and that's the biggest thing, is
I
sustainability.
agree. It is, and I had mentioned to you earlier about, how I still pace, and kind of what I mean by that too is the same thing. Like, I don't feel like I need to be that. Um, of course, I mean, you want to do things for friends and family, and it's okay. And I still have that drive, and I love helping people. But to be that extreme people pleaser, or have everything be perfect, or it just have a lot of stress involved about getting everything done. I mean, I don't have that urgency anymore. It's just more of like what feels good to me, and my body and everything, and it's just part of the process you know of recovering and learning who you are, your true self. So
Hmm.
yeah, and I do love the analogy you mentioned about the run that you did. I love the analogy that you've used a couple times in the group calls about, like, think of it as working out, your APs. You're going to be sore, but what's going to happen after you get sore? You're building muscle, and it just, continue. And it makes so much sense to me and that is 100% true. I mean, I really took that with me through a lot of this, and that was another golden nugget for me.
Absolutely, because it changes the association with the symptoms as well. Because initially, most people, when they're having these mysterious debilitating symptoms, especially when the doctors are saying, no, you're perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with you, that just makes the symptoms feel even worse, because now you're thinking, oh, I got something bad. It's like undetectable, so they don't even know what this is, but I'm definitely feeling it. So
Right.
the association with the symptoms is all negative. It's like you're trying to avoid them and escape them as much as you can with all your energy. But once you change that association with them, and you know, once you learn about the nervous system and see that, oh, it's just a flare up. This is just like my legs getting sore after doing some squats that I
Hmm.
haven't done in a long time. The only difference is this isn't muscle soreness. It's about 20 other sensations in my body that are very uncomfortable,
Right.
but doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just a scientific process in the body.
Right.
It's not my
And
body out to get me or anything.
right. And that made so much sense to me. And, you know, and it's okay. I mean, even if you do have an AP, it's okay to be comfortable in it, and maybe even enjoy it a little bit. Like, if you need some downtime, enjoy that time and kind of embrace it. And that in itself kind of makes things continue to progress, and you're not even realizing it at the time, and it really does. I mean, there's so many things that I've been able to do this past summer and fall that, again, like, I never thought possible. So um it's really amazing how this has all come together.
And I know you said like the first 5 or 6 months, it felt slow, right? And for some people, it feels very slow. But when you zoom out and look at the last year and a half of how far you've come, it's actually a massive difference. So some people would look at that
It
and say,
is.
that's
It is.
crazy. That is a
It is,
lot.
it really is. You think when you're in it, it's slow,
Yeah.
but it's actually not as slow as what you think. Especially for how far people can come. And, even like as you get to the point where, again, like I said, you can like enjoy kind of the process and learn to, roll with it instead of thinking that it's an enemy. Really, our
Yeah.
bodies, it 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 detects almost like a threat that really isn't there, but it feels like it's trying to protect us. So once you realize a lot of that and the intricacies of the nervous system and how complex it really can be, It's stuff that I never even knew before. And, the knowledge is power, so it just, yeah, it is very, very interesting.
Mhm. So what was your first big win? Was it about 5 or 6 months in where you had that jump in capacity and the symptoms started to come off or
Yeah,
started
I
to
would
go away?
say the jump in capacity. I still had some symptoms. However, I was getting out of the fear response. So I would do things, and again, the coaches, Junior would work with me on what I can do. But my biggest one was, um, well, I'll start with the first one, which was big at the time. It was going out to dinner with my husband last winter, last January. I hadn't been on a date in a restaurant with him since I had gotten sick, and it was a huge win. And we had talked about, maybe Junior and I had talked about maybe going a little bit earlier than the dinner rush, and because of the noise and things going on. And now, I mean, I'm going to restaurants like, quite often. I mean, it's just that was a big milestone for me. And then definitely the second one was going on like a mini trip with our kids. It was about only 45 minutes away, which is totally fine. And it was staying in treehouse cabins, and we did some activities, and I was able to be involved in a lot of the stuff. And in the beginning, when I started getting a capacity increase, I was okay with, if I have to drive separate, that's okay. I can always come back if I need to and rest. And um, I just began to have gratitude for all the things that I could do instead of the things that I couldn't do. And now a lot of the time I'm making the whole events. And just really, really taking it all in right now. But yeah, those, I'm sorry, I got off topic there. Those were probably my first big wins.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for sharing. And I remember the first time I went out to a restaurant or in public or to a mall or drove on a public road, it's almost like that breath of fresh air of just reintegrating back into the world,
Yes.
feeling like you're a part of society again.
Yes.
Because for the longest time, you just feel invisible. You feel like the world's kind of just moved on without you. And sometimes I never thought I'd be able to ever reintegrate back into the world, especially when I was hospitalized and bedridden. When you can't even
Right.
really feed yourself, you're thinking, how the heck am I going to make my way back into the world again? That's like climbing Mount Everest, essentially.
Right.
So, I actually want to go back a little bit and ask you about transitioning from, being completely bedridden to learning to walk again and talk again. Uh, because it's interesting. It's the same Stephanie in there that was going through that whole experience. It's the same Stephanie that is able to do all these things today. And same for me. It's like I was thinking and I had similar visions back then that I had now, but it's just completely different reality that I'm in, but it's the same Miguel,
Yeah.
So sometimes I think, was that a dream? Did that really happen?
Right. Right.
It's
And it,
surreal.
I agree. I felt the same way. I definitely did. I'm not gonna quit. I had my kids, my family, my parents, just myself, most importantly, to to live for and to continue. And quitting wasn't an option for me. And integrating those things, I know driving was a huge thing for me. It was like, you know I remember before I got sick, sometimes you would complain about, oh, I have to, drive the kids to practice or do this or do that or run errands or go to the grocery store. Like, it's just another thing you got to do. But no, now I'm like, this is something that I get to do. It's like, it's, it's a huge thing that I'm grateful for. And I just kind of take in every moment and really, really it's almost like living in a different life because you see things differently now.
That's how I would describe it too. It's like a different reality. And it's really interesting because I could still think back and remember it like it was 30 seconds ago that I was in that hospital bed. It's crazy to think. And I still have to tell myself that it really happened. When I'm
Right.
talking about these stories and filming these YouTube videos, I'm just like, holy cow. I surprise myself sometimes
No,
of
you're right. And I remember like your videos that you've shared, and I I I feel like we have, a lot of similar things in common with the stories that we have gone through. I know there's some differences, but it is weird. When I first started the program, I felt like I was still in it. And even though I had made a little bit of progress, because I did start to catch on that, okay, wait, there's a nervous system thing going on here before I started the program. There was some signs, some different things, you know, that I could tell that there was some deregulation going on. But it was so complex at that time. And with all the diagnoses that I had, and just, the medications that I was on, that a lot of medications I've been able to get off of. But yeah, I just, it's, it's just, you know, so different now as far as, where you start versus, you know, where you are now.
if there's one thing recovery taught me or going through this whole CFS journey, it's how much can change in such a short period of time. And I say short as in like it could be several months, could be, a handful of years, but
Yeah.
even within that first year of figuring this stuff out, I went from bedridden in the hospital bed to hiking up a mountain in Hawaii. Now I still felt symptoms, but to be able to do that and not crash and watch the sunrise and feel the wind on my face, it was like a dream come true. So it's taught me that really anything is possible. Like if I could get through that, then all these other problems in life or challenges, that's nothing compared to not being able to take a shower for weeks or not being
I
able to feed
agree.
myself. So it's like a
I
good reference
agree.
point.
Yeah,
To really
I you mentioned that. I remember having to need help feeding myself too at certain points through this. And yeah, it's so different, especially, again, when I was first in the program, and I still felt like I was in it. And, you know, it still felt real to me. Even though I had made a little bit of progress, I still was, very far off from where I am now. But now, like you said, it's like almost like a dream that happened. And the sky is the limit. And, I am taking things day by day, and there's, of course, always still progress to be made. I always look at myself as a work in progress. Um, but it is amazing how far that you can come, and in a relatively short time. I have seen in the program people make complete transformations within a couple months, and I have seen it be like a year and a half, too. So it's gonna happen if if you put your all into this. And again, it can start off with 10% or so, like Junior had explained, and then continue, and you know it will click at the pace that you're meant to have it click. So
absolutely. Everybody's on their own timeline, and my biggest advice for people is focus on your 3-foot world, focus on your own journey, your own timeline, right? And keep it
yeah.
simple. Keep it as simple as you can. It's very easy to overcomplicate these things, especially when you're in adjustment periods. Your mind will start running 10 times faster during an adjustment period, but you have to realize that this is an amygdala response. It's a survival response. So the sooner you can recognize that, the sooner you can keep things simple and reel it back in. It's kind of like a train on the rails. You want to keep the train on the rails. It'll get wobbly sometimes, but you want to catch when you're starting to downward spiral and keep the momentum going by keeping it simple. following the
Right.
basic principles. And the number one principle really is to respond well to symptoms, meaning try to stay neutral when you have symptoms or towards this whole CFS thing. Because the more, especially negative emotions you have, the more symptoms you will feel. They are directly correlated. Once you
Right.
realize that, it's powerful.
It is. And I learned a lot through this program too. The words you use matter. Um, you know, when you use negative words instead of saying, oh, I'm crashing, or I feel awful. Maybe use, I'm in a colorful AP, or just different words that you're using, or, if you're talking about it all the time with, friends or family versus, maybe not making that always the topic of conversation and talking about other things. It really does something and starts to retrain the nervous system,
Mhm.
and how your body is responding, to
Yeah,
things.
language is very important. So, one of my last questions is, what are some of the biggest things you've done in the last 6 to 12 months? Just to show people what life is like these days, to go from hospitalized and couchbound to assisted living, all of that, to where you are now. What are some of those big events that you've done that were like the highlights of this year?
Yeah. So it is a highlight, being able to take care of my husband, because he has been, a real driving force, and being there for me. It's it always wasn't pretty. Everybody goes through their own things, during it's hard on caregivers as well. And but being able to take care of him finally, when he was going through his medical issue, it really was a highlight for me. Not that it happened to him, but just that I was able to be there for him. And I have been able to cook, family meals, eat dinners with my family again, instead of, sitting in bed. I we co-own a boat with my brother and his wife, and we have a lake that's about just 10 minutes from us. And the past 2 years I haven't really been able to go out. This summer I made it out 15 times, and I didn't get
Oh,
dizzy. I mean, it was full days. When I say full days, like maybe like 4 to 5 hours on the boat. Going to restaurants again. The biggest thing for me is making all of my kids' events, their school events, their sporting events, being able to play games with them again. I could do a little bit of that before, maybe not in the very beginning, but it might have been in bed or like something. I'm able to be more active in their lives now, um, which that's always been a top priority for me, was my kids. Going to family functions, social functions. I went to my first concert this summer since I got sick. It was awesome. And I was still having some symptoms then. They were my APs are, when I first started, they were at 8 to 10 in intensity, 10 being the worst. And it pretty much stayed like that. Even at baseline it was about an 8. And it's i- you know it's so much less now, and I'm still making progress and still working. I mean, they're much shorter. I'm talking from weeks to now maybe a couple hours. And just yeah, working within my body and the capabilities that I have, with this. And I'm trying to think of, I mean, there's definitely been other wins that I've had, going to the pumpkin farm with the kids and being able to walk around. I have worked a lot, with my husband on our house, countless hours, lifting again, being able to lift bags, much more than what I used to be able to when I first got sick. I definitely have gone, from walking maybe 500 steps to walking, 7 to 10,000. The other day I did 16 and, no AP. It was awesome. And it's something you don't even think about anymore. Like, oh gosh, is this gonna, send me into an AP? It just comes naturally and you come to trust yourself and your body and everything. Um, so yeah, those are a few things that
It's a
that
lot of
have
things.
been, yeah, yeah. And
It's
yeah, we have a
amazing.
lot more things planned. We have a trip planned coming up this spring. I feel very confident about it. I'm not worried about it whatsoever. Um, so yeah, and I've also been helping my friend out at her store on occasion. So volunteering for that has been, really nice. And it's nice to get kind of integrate back into the world of things. So it's been really
That's
great.
amazing. Wow, it sounds like you had your plate full this year, but with good fun stuff, and you're
Yeah.
definitely catching up and you know, catching up and then some with that time that was, missed from doing all these activities for a couple of
Yes.
years, especially that
Yes.
boat stuff, 15 days on a boat in the summer.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
quite a bit.
It is a lot. It's definitely one of my favorite things to do, and to share it with my family is fun. And get to I definitely concentrate, like you said, making up some time with my family, but being able to go out and hang out with friends and do things like that too on occasion, or meet somebody for lunch, or go to the grocery store, do all those things, take care of the dogs, and just the whole thing. It's really a dream come true. And yeah, it's just the sky's the limit.
That's amazing. That's a powerful, powerful story. And the cool thing is, the story's just getting started. You're closing the
Yeah.
chapter of one book and opening another book, which is the 2.0 version of Stephanie, which is
Yeah.
so cool. So, so cool to see. I can't wait to do like an update interview as well to see how much further you've come along, in several months
Yeah.
from now.
Yeah,
But
thank you. I would love that, and to definitely keep in touch regarding that, because I think that there is definitely, even more progress to be made for sure. But yeah, I mean, anybody that uh, dreams of getting that quality of life back, it's going to happen. You put the work in, and it's going to happen.
absolutely. So, my last question for you is, would you say it's been a worthwhile investment doing
Oh,
working
yes.
with CFS recovery?
Yes, 100%. I do like how you guys offer different kinds of, many different kinds of programs. That way it can make it more affordable for some people that might not be able to do the program that I, went into. Um, However, out of anything that I have done, any doctors, anything that I've done, that's the best money I've ever spent by far. And my husband, like my family, everyone fully agrees. But yeah, I love the different programs that you guys offer. There's a lot of versatility. You guys are really there to help people, and you care, and you can tell that you care. And there's still the YouTube, the free YouTube channels, and the Facebook, and the your book. My friend just bought it. It's actually somebody that I know.
Mm,
That has the same illness. So she just bought your book, and yeah, the Instagrams too, and everything. I think it's just it's the best thing that I've ever done by far.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and I'm so glad it gave you the tools you needed to help turn your life around. So very exciting to see
Thank
what
you.
happens next. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to see your journey unfold, and it's just getting started. So
Yeah,
this was amazing. Thanks so much for sharing some of your story, Stephanie, and for
yeah,
everybody watching
absolutely.
this right now. This was very powerful to go from hospitalized and bedridden and learning to eat and talk and walk again to walking 7 to 10,000 steps a day and going on being able to go on a boat multiple times and do all these things Stephanie has done. It just proves that you can absolutely get your life back if you're dealing with something like this, and especially if the doctors aren't finding anything and they're not really offering you any solutions. So keep watching videos like this. Keep pouring inspiration into yourself through these videos, and then maybe one day you'll be up here sharing your story with people, because it wasn't too long ago, Stephanie, where you were watching other people's
Yeah.
recovery stories.
Yeah,
And
I
here,
didn't. I didn't know if I was gonna, if I was gonna get here. I believed in the process, but you're always that person. You never know where it's like you don't know, but it's gonna happen. It's definitely
absolutely.
gonna happen.
Yeah, keep on going. Don't ever give up. Recovery is absolutely possible. So if you
Yes.
guys enjoyed this video, comment down below your biggest takeaway. What was the biggest golden nugget you got from this video? Things that Stephanie shared. And if you did need some extra help, I'll leave a link down below where you could apply to see if you're a good fit to work with our recovery system. We obviously want to make sure we can help you if we were to get started. But other than that, always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. See you guys in the next video. Stephanie, thank you so much. Keep crushing it.
Thank you.